A day that Geralyn Ritter said felt completely normal ended up being the day that nearly ended her life and changed it forever. Before we talk to her about the horrific accident she was in, let's take a look at what happened that day.
The thing that always hits me about that day was just how normal it was.
May 12th, 2015 started out just like any other day for Geralyn Ritter. After she finished up her business trip in D.C., she decided to take the train to Philadelphia for an event before going back home.
So I got on the train. It was after 9 o'clock at night. I was texting my husband, leaving Philly, home soon, ETA 10:30.
Then, as she stood up, she noticed something felt different about this train.
I felt like the train was going fast, and then it felt like the train was rocking.
The train was going 106 miles per hour, more than twice the speed limit as it approached a turn.
I remember this flash of a realization that we were tipping over, and I remember hearing my own scream, and that's my last memory.
Her train derailed, and the car that she was on was completely crushed. Meanwhile, Geralyn's husband was at home in New Jersey when he got a news alert on his phone about the derailment. So he used the Find My iPhone app to track Geralyn's phone.
It showed my phone about 20 feet off of a railroad track.
Then, with the help of his neighbor driving, he took off for Philadelphia to go to the crash site. Geralyn was injured so badly, though, she was taken by helicopter to a trauma center in Philadelphia. But no one knew who she was.
Very often women don't have ID on their body in a pocket. That's what happened to me. I was a Jane Doe.
So her husband started driving to hospitals searching for Geralyn. After hours of looking, they finally made it to a hospital that had an unidentified woman in surgery.
I had been thrown from the train with such force that all my abdominal organs were thrown up into my chest.
The medical staff showed her husband a bag of the patient's personal items, and he saw the watch and bracelet that he gave his wife.
They both just burst into tears. They fell on the ground, realizing that they had found me and I was alive.
Wow, Geralyn is here to talk about what happened after her train was derailed and left her severely injured. Please welcome to the show, Geralyn. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Wow.
We are honored to have you,
Yes, we are.
and we're very excited to have you today. So tell us, after your husband realized that you were alive, what happened next?
Well, I was unconscious, but he immediately started trying to reach out to my family, talk to the doctors, let people know I was alive, but also the doctors cautioned him that that was unlikely to last. And the trauma surgeon actually told one of my brothers, who's a physician, that they did need to come very quickly because it was unlikely I would survive. All of my internal organs had been thrown up into my chest. My stomach was above my heart. My intestines were in my armpit. The doctor characterized my rib cage as having been annihilated. It was just crushed. And my pelvis was broken in half. So one of my brothers jumped on the plane with a dark suit in his suitcase for my funeral.
Oh my God.
Geralyn, this story is unbelievable, beginning to end, and how you're telling it almost smiling still. So once you got home, you obviously had life-changing injuries, right? But what were you most worried about or concerned about?
I have 3 sons, and at the time they were 15, 12, and 8 years old. And, you know, I was in the hospital for a couple of months, and in the hospital I kept feeling like, hey, I was getting better. But it's when you get home that the gap to the mom you used to be really became so apparent. My boys, they were playing, they would scamper upstairs, and I'd sit on the bottom floor in my wheelchair and look up and think, how can I be a mom? How can I can't get my own food. I can't go to the restroom. There's so much uncertainty, and that was the hardest thing to deal with, was the uncertainty of, would I get better? When would I get better? And what did that even look like?
Wow, that's hard. Now, this is a part of the story I think a lot of people can relate to. You were in so much pain, Geralyn. Your doctors prescribed you many, many medications for it. But look at this. Wow, there's a scene that we're seeing on our screen here. But how did that create another obstacle for your recovery?
You know, initially I think it was helpful because even with all those drugs, I didn't know pain like that was possible. And you know, you think you can deal with anything for a little while, but when it goes on for weeks and months, it really hurt my mental health, and depression and those sorts of things made themselves known with full force. But about 6 months in, I'd had several surgeries, and it was time to start weaning off the fentanyl, the oxycodone, the OxyContin, and that was a whole nother part of the journey. It felt like insult on injury, you know, because in addition to your pain, you've got the shakes and the nausea and the chills and, frankly, the stigma associated with being dependent on those drugs.
Oh. And now look, we're now 8 years out since the crash. How did this experience change the way you look at just life in general?
It changes everything. You know, I say you don't go back, but hopefully you go forward. And a lot of those changes are good ones. I do think that I have a different perspective. I like to think that the little things don't matter as much to me, and it's easy to, you know, keep things in perspective because the experience is never far from my mind. I work full time again. I have 3 wonderful, healthy boys. My husband and I celebrated 25 years of marriage, but you are absolutely a different person after something like that.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Speaking of which, how have you used this traumatic experience to help others?
It's been very rewarding. A couple years after the accident, I started writing because there were so many extraordinary things that were happening and so many people doing such kind things for me that I didn't want to forget. And gradually a mentor that I really looked up to said to me, "You have to write a book." And I said, "Oh, I don't want to seem like I'm so strong or self-congratulatory." And he said, no, you don't get it. He said, "There's somebody out there struggling with something, and your story might be able to help." And that really helped me frame things. And that's why I'm telling my story now. If one person out there is struggling with something and takes one idea or technique or ray of hope from my story, then this accident isn't just a black hole in my life and in the universe. Something has come of it. And that makes me keep it in perspective.
That is beautiful.
You are
and I have
light in this world.
I know.
Oh,
I got her
my
book
goodness.
right here. So, Gerilyn, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your incredible story. DBL Nation, you can learn even more about her story and recovery by picking up a copy of Gerilyn's book, Bone by Bone, wherever books are sold. Thank you so much, Gerilyn.
It was an honor.
Bravo.
Thank you all so much.